A year has passed and so we've come to another Ravenloft month. For this year, I originally thought I would put together a list of my favorite Ravenloft adventures. After all, I know many DMs out there will want to run some horror-themed stories this month, and I wanted to give some recommendations. But as I started doing some research and looked through my collection of adventures, I found that a lot of my favorite Ravenloft adventures came from the Children of the Night series, and it didn't feel fair to compare those adventures to the longer published ones. In fact, there were so many Children of the Night stories I wanted to recommend that I finally decided to make this video all about them. So, first off, let me briefly explain what the Children of the Night series is and why I like it so much. The Children of the Night adventure collections were meant to be companion pieces to the Van Richten books, which were books that fleshed out and described in detail different monster types. Those books greatly expanded on the mechanics and lore of certain monsters and are fantastic source books in their own right. Each Children of the Night book released contained a series of unique monsters that used the new materials from the Van Richten series, and a short adventure using that monster. Now, these adventures were short and focused and could easily be dropped into any existing campaign. Almost all of them can be played in a session or two, although some could be used as a starting point for a much larger story. This makes them the perfect adventures to use as one-shots or as gothic horror detours in your regular campaign this month. I personally have used these in between longer Ravenloft adventures to fill out journeys between domains or time in between stories. I even threw in one of them as a detour on the player's journey home after my last Curse of Strahd campaign. And speaking of, you could definitely incorporate some of these into Curse of Strahd. Only 4 Children of the Night books were ever released, covering ghosts, vampires, werebeasts, and the Created, which covered golems. Each contained about a dozen unique and interesting creatures and adventures to go alongside them. I think it's a shame they never got around to releasing more. I would have enjoyed seeing Children of the Night books based on fiends or the Ancient Dead. I can highly recommend that you seek out this series, but before you do that, let me present you with a list of my favorite adventures from the Children of the Night series. Seepage deals with the legacy of a long since defeated golem, long before the heroes get involved in the story. An inventor by the name of Lumley created all kinds of fantastical mechanical inventions, many of which he incorporated into his house. But his crowning achievement was a fully automated butler, in fact a mechanical golem. Unfortunately, tragedy struck, as it so often does in Ravenloft, and the mechanical man went berserk and killed a few people, resulting in a mob forming to destroy the monster. And Lumley himself was murdered by his golem as he tried to save it from the mob. The players are hired by Lumley's relatives to head into his dilapidated manor to recover the remains of the automatic man so that he can convince the superstitious locals that the house is safe to renovate now. Of course, it's not. The essence of the automatic man has seeped into the house itself, and once the players get deep enough inside, he awakens and turns the house itself against the players. Seepage is very much a haunted house story, but without a ghost, at least not a human one. In fact, it reminds me of various TV shows and movies featuring killer AI taking control of a smart house. The adventure also reminds me a lot of the escape portions of the Curse of Strahd prequel Death House. So, if your players enjoyed that, then I think they will like Seepage as well. Personally, I enjoy the visuals of the old Lumley house, and it has a lot of character. I also like how the adventure plays with expectations. The players will be going in and expecting all kinds of traps and obstacles, and I think most will also expect the automatic man to reactivate and fight them at the end. But instead, it's rather smooth sailings until they actually find the golem's remains, and then the house itself turns against them, and they're trapped inside. I also just really enjoy golems. I especially like the many unique and sinister kinds encountered in Ravenloft, so expect to see a few more recommendations from the Created book on this list. It's hard to get more classical horror than a good ghost story, but A Matter of Trust is actually the only ghost story that made it onto my list of recommendations. Part of that is definitely just my personal preference towards golems and werebeasts, but the Children of the Night Ghosts book has some decent adventures. But from among them, A Matter of Trust is my favorite. A big part of that comes from the fact that it's not a story about fighting a ghost. I don't necessarily like ghost stories where you have to battle the ghost. Ghost stories should be more about finding out what drives the ghost and helping it to move on. A Matter of Trust is very much a detective story. 2 boys have been killed, one of them murdered, the other in a tragic accident, and it's up to the players to get to the bottom of the mystery. The ghost of the tale, Wilhelm Pellman, saw his best friend being brutally murdered by his older brother and ran in a panic from the scene. Unfortunately, he ran right onto a busy street and was run down by a wagon. Now he haunts his family and the street where he died, trying to find justice for his friend. The ghost is left in a state he was just before he died, with massive head trauma that has blinded him and prevents him from speaking more than a few specific words. And his touch also blinds the living, so he has a hard time communicating his needs to the players. It's a detail I think helps the story, since it would be far too easy to solve if he could just tell others what he saw. The players need to trust the ghost, and let him show them what happened. This is one instance where brute force just won't cut it. Something that I've always felt feels very Ravenloft are traveling carnival shows, and Missing Bones from the Werebeast book deals with one of those. Professor Arcanus is a were-gorilla, but he's neither the main antagonist nor an evil person. The actual villain of the tale is the vampire Duke Gundar, whose bones have been serving as a stage prop for the Professor's magic show and gallery of curious items. A careless local looking to damage the Professor removed the stake keeping the former Domain Lord dead, and was killed by the starving vampire as it rose. Now the players need to figure out what happened, ally with the Professor, and take down Duke Gundar before he has time to recover to his full might. I have to admit I like the traveling magic show and the Professor Arcanus more than I like the actual adventure. He has a lot of interesting items, and he's just the type of NPC I really like to portray and mix into my games. He is also someone who can be a great contact for a group and lead to all kinds of interesting encounters along a campaign. I do like the reintroduction of Duke Gundar as well, and how this adventure ties into some of the storylines and places that I've had in my own games. He is the former Domain Lord of Gundarak, a country that has now been annexed by its neighbors, Barovia and Envidia. So for me, this is an adventure I could easily see being dropped into my ongoing Ravenloft campaign. A Bloody Canvas from the Werebeast books is a story about obsession, madness, a cursed magical item, and the lengths that some artists are willing to go to succeed. It centers on the mediocre artist Henry Milton, who has come across a palette that when filled with blood produces fantastical but disturbing artwork. Each time he uses it, however, he is corrupted a little bit more and he's slowly being turned into a savage and feral werebore. He has now been driven to the point where he's started to abduct and murder people to create disturbing artwork that in turn drives people insane, and it's up to the players to realize what is happening and stop him. It's quite a short adventure, and what drew me to it is more of the visuals and themes than anything else. Horror is filled with stories like these, of cursed and terrible artwork that drives viewers insane. I know I myself have written some adventures dealing with similar ideas. It is also an adventure where the true threat isn't the villain, but the tool that he uses, which can just as easily be picked up by another, perhaps even a player character if he's careless, and starting the whole horror show all over again. Who doesn't enjoy a good heist? If your players are the type to prefer roguish characters, then I suggest giving A Heart of Gold a look. Another adventure from the Created book, this one deals with the coin golem Lucre. A rather unique and interesting creature, Lucre actually started out as an intelligent and sentient magical sword that was melted down and reforged into a coin golem. His true form is that of 9 gold coins, between which his mind can jump, so he inhabits a single coin at a time. He can stretch out and control any pile of coins he touches, however, and can form bodies out of treasure piles. Essentially, Lucre was created as a way to defend a treasure hoard from thieves, turning the gold piles he guards into bodies and weapons with which to kill any intruder. The problem is, he used to be a sword, and turns out he really enjoys killing, and he feels very protective of the riches he guards, to the point that he has come to believe that they rightfully belong to him. To feed his bloodlust, Lucre has started a scheme where he hires thieves to break into his treasure room so that he can brutally murder them. In the adventure, he hires the players to rob him, fully expecting to make short work of them as well. Now, Lucre is an interesting foe and can easily become a recurring villain. You can defeat his bodies, but he essentially has 9 lives, and the foresight to spread himself out, so there's little chance that the players will defeat him completely the first time around. He will also make players forever more paranoid about gold coins. You think the players are scared that anything could be a mimic? Wait until they start fearing that every treasure pile or coin purse they find is a potential coin golem. Wax museums and wax figures are a staple of Gothic horror, and many people find such lifelike facsimiles unsettling, so it's not strange to find a Ravenloft adventure that focuses on them. Wax golems in Ravenloft have the disturbing ability to absorb the memories and skills of the people they are made to copy, and so are quite sinister compared to many other golems who tend to be more direct and brutish. In Waxing Horrific from the Created, we meet Alexander du Sereis, a talented wax sculptor who in a drunken haze accidentally communes with the dark powers and makes a wax golem of himself. This wax golem then proceeds to absorb his memories and skills, including his ability to create more wax golems. Then the golem sets about to slowly but surely replace all humans in the city with his own kind. It's part detective story, part invasion of the body snatchers. I really like this adventure because it's rather open and provides us with some interesting scenes and characters to play around with. In fact, it will not be clear from the start that the golem is behind the mystery. At first the players might instead jump to the conclusion that the wax sculptor is trying a coup to seize power in the city, replacing key individuals, which is partially true, but the golem of course would not stop with just the city's rulers. It craves a world populated by nothing but wax creatures. I was a big fan of the Phantom of the Opera growing up, and I've always had a soft spot in my heart for D&D adventures set in and around theatres and operas, so it's not strange that I was drawn to A Night at the Opera from the Werebeasts book. It's an adventure that on the surface very much appears to be a story like the Phantom of the Opera, a haunted theatre, the ghost starts to make demands, heck, there's even a chandelier that falls, but it's sort of a twisted version where the seemingly innocent Christine-like character is the villain. In A Night at the Opera, the werefox Angel Pojaro wants to replace the current diva, but has been unable to sway the owner of opera with her magical charms to replace her, so she has started a campaign of terror to drive the owner to see things her way. The players of course need to first debunk the ghost story, and then as they track down and face what they will come to expect is nothing more than a disgruntled human, they come face to face with a deadly werebeast. Not all golems are made to resemble humans, and not all golems are born out of evil. In fact, Chaperone, the villain of cat and mouse games from the Created book, is born out of loneliness and love. In the adventure, a young woman who lost her entire family has created a guardian and a companion for herself. A large cat-like golem that is extremely jealous and protective and unfortunately possesses many of the worst traits of cats. Once the young woman starts to become more outgoing and attracted a suitor, the chaperone took it upon himself to murder him and present the remains to his mistress. As expected, that didn't go over great, and now a rift has formed between the golem and his creator, one that will surely end in the young woman's death. Cat and Mouse Games is an adventure that is ideal to throw in during a longer journey, as the players get roped into a search for a missing person as they're traveling through the village. As they track down the missing suitor, they are harassed by the golem as they plays a deadly game with them. Eventually, they find their way to its lair and its mistress, just in time to see the beast turn on its creator. If they're quick and clever, they can save the girl and kill the golem, and if they fail, they might very well find themselves hunted for some time. Children of the Night Vampires is probably my least favorite of the collections. It does sport several interesting vampires and ideas, but I just feel for the most part, vampires make for poor random encounters, and often don't fit into short adventures that can be played through in a few hours. They tend to be better fits as villains for story arcs or campaigns, such as The Curse of Strahd. One tale does stand out, however, in the book, and it's one that I ran during my last campaign. Love Lies Dying features a Penanggalan, which is not your typical type of vampire, and it shows up in a rather unexpected location, making it quite hard for a player to realize what's up until the very end. The adventure focuses on a convent that has become the lair of the Penanggalan Marla. She was once a sister at the convent, but was seduced and corrupted by a fiend, and turned into the monster that she is now. She and her creator then slaughtered the entire convent, and she lingers there now, waiting for trusting travelers to prey upon, and has developed a special hatred for lovers. The players encounter a couple trying to elope and take them to the convent, where it is clear that something is not right. It shouldn't take long for them to realize that a vampire might be on the loose, but Marla won't be detectable by normal means. She's able to walk outside in the sun in her human form, and more than likely the players will start to suspect that she is under the vampire's control, and may even try to save her. I managed to string my players along to the very end. They knew she was involved somehow, but she managed to keep them doubting. And then when they finally cornered her and confronted her, they were genuinely surprised and shocked when her head tore away from her body and she revealed her true nature. It's just another great little side story to throw in during long trips, and one that I had a lot of fun with myself. The last adventure I would like to recommend is another tale out of the created book, The Lesser of Many Evils. This one deals with the big guy on the cover of the book, the spell rune golem Eisenwrath. He was once the first of the evil treants of Ravenloft, until he was killed by an adventuring wizard, who did what any adventurer does with the body of a powerful creature he has slain. He turned it into stuff and sold it. Not only did he make all kinds of wands and staves and magical scrolls from a treant's corpse, but also paper and wood that was sold and used by crafters across Ravenloft. Unfortunately, a spark of the creature remained, and it managed to regain some semblance of sentience, and animated the parts of itself that were still in the wizard's workshop, and then proceeded to murder the one who had killed it. Eisenwrath can sense where every part of itself is, and if it's in close enough proximity it can control them, and so it set out to started wandering across the land, a nearly unstoppable force hell-bent on putting itself back together. What makes him truly unique is that he can control magical scrolls around him, making him not only a huge beast of a monster, but a spellcaster. He can even turn the player's own scrolls against them. In the adventure where he shows up, a small village of very devoted people have several religious icons that were once part of Eisenwrath. Recently, the forest around the village seems to have turned against them, and some great evil is approaching. From the villagers' perspective, the holy icons have started trying to warn them of this evil, but in actuality they're just reacting to the presence of Eisenwrath. The players have to find out what is happening, and find a way to save the villagers from the creature, or abandon them to a dark fate. The adventure is full of those little choices, where there isn't really an ideal one. Eisenwrath is just interested in the icons. The village could save itself by just leaving the pieces out for him to collect, but the villagers are unwilling to part with the blessed items, which are the few things of value they possess and which have been so important to them. And you also have a bit of a murder mystery thrown in there, and a battle against a trio of evil treants. It's not a long adventure, but it will definitely entertain your players for an evening, and lets you play around with some unusual monsters. I used this adventure as an epilogue to Curse of Strahd. My group ran into the village on their way back to the Sword Coast, and it fit pretty well power level wise and proved to be a challenge, so if you're looking for a short adventure this month for a group of characters that are slightly higher in level, I recommend giving The Lesser of Many Evils a look. I'm not sure what makes it my favorite, if it's just the backstory, the design of the monster, or how it forces players into situations where there are no easy consequence-free ways out, but I can say it was a lot of fun to play. Well, that's my 10 recommendations for adventures that you can run in an evening or two. If you're interested in Ravenloft, Curse of Strahd, or D&D horror in general, I highly recommend picking up the Children of the Night series of adventures. I'll add links to them below. They're great little adventures that you can easily sprinkle into existing campaigns, or run as one-shots when needed. I love having these kinds of adventures in my back pocket for when a player cancels or a group of friends decides at the last minute they want to run a game, or if my campaign takes off in a completely unexpected direction and I need a filler episode to figure things out. So give them a look. And as always, if you enjoyed my recommendations, please leave this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more. And if you want to support my channel, then please share this video with your friends or on social media. It really helps out a lot. You can also follow me on Tumblr or Twitter, or check out my DM's guild page. Links to all of those below. Until next time, Dungeon Delvers.